I found my dream job at Google, but ended up quitting twice for reasons beyond my expectation. I was 24 years old, standing outside of a bar in Denver when I had my first phone screening for a job at Google. I was thrilled. I thought to myself, I'm going to do everything possible to get this job. I'm going to make sure that I'm not just the best candidate, but that they have no reason to reject me. I was so determined to seize this opportunity that I even paid for my own flights to get to the second round of interviews. At the time, the team that I was interviewing with had budgeted enough money to cover my flights. As soon as I got hired as a primary operations analyst that summer, I packed a suitcases and left everything else in my Chicago apartment. It was a dream come true. When I first started working there in 2017, I loved it. There was a lot of work to be done because I was helping launch a new product, Google Service Ads, which was still in beta. Traditional digital advertising is cost per click or cost per impressions. But this new product was cost per lead. And Google would guarantee the work of any job booked through the platform up to $2,000. It was low risk and high reward for both advertisers and customers, a win-win for all parties involved. The handoff process was really clunky, and a lot of the businesses needed hand-holding. I was the middleman who confirmed license and background checks, and then looped in the appropriate account manager. And as we launched this product all over the country, I was dedicated to making the transition as smooth as possible. But as time went on, I realized that working more efficiently meant my days became emptier and emptier. We started launching in smaller cities, and the volume of businesses that needed to be worked on was much lower. We had much less to do for cities like Des Moines and Jacksonville than we had for New York City or Chicago. That, combined with the fact we were working more efficiently, meant I was putting in only 30 minutes to an hour of work each day by December. And it became very frustrating. Here I was at 25, working at a big tech company, and interested in doing so much more, even just related to the product itself. I wanted to make an impact. But whenever I tried to pitch new ideas or projects, I'd hear, "Hey, you're doing great. Don't worry about it," suggesting I stay in my lane. It seemed clear to me that there wasn't room to collaborate with other teams or to push myself. It's by no means common to leave Google after only a year when people get in. They usually don't want to leave. But I was commuting for hours a day and not learning anything new. I was watching a lot of YouTube to kill time. So I started looking around for other jobs and applying to a few each week. I remember I was sitting in my office one day when my phone rang. It was a recruiter calling to tell me about an exciting position as an operations analyst on Google local service ads. My stomach dropped. That was my job, and I was the only operations analyst in the department. I was convinced that Google was going to let me go before I even had my first annual review, despite not having any issues or outstanding bad marks against me. In reality, they were hiring another analyst, but that had been communicated to me. Although I wouldn't have been involved directly in the hiring decision, it does stand to reason that I could have at least been informed of the changes. This was the beginning of a growing divide between leadership and the ground floor teams. I was a senior growth analyst and I didn't even know what that meant, at least at Google. I knew what my job was. There was no training, no onboarding, structure, team goals, and management. People bragged about how much company money they were blowing through, and it made me uncomfortable listening to them. One of my higher UPS was on a vacation when I arrived, and when he got back, he showed me the receipts of how much money he spent at dinner every night on the company card. It was my first real intro to startup culture. I stayed for 1 month before reaching out to my former team at Google. I was rehired a month or two later, but in a slightly different version of my old position. At this point I already knew the drill. I told myself, okay, I'll just sit around collecting this paycheck and building out my resume with Google on it. I knew how the game worked, and I had learned that the grass wasn't greener on the other side. I made up my mind to ride out this job for the long haul, and I thought I'd be okay with that. But as the months dragged on, I realized I was wrong. We moved out of being a beta product. Our team used to be super collaborative. But once we became an official marketing product under the Google Ads suite, our leadership started leaving our team one by one. Our director left to start his own company, and our manager went to Facebook without telling anyone on our team. The replacements they brought in were much more bottom-line people. It felt to me like they cared more about visibility and the appearance of working hard than actually doing good work. After my manager and director left, most of the full-time roles on my team were converted to contractor and vendor roles. And the majority of the people that I worked with were contractors. Once their year-long contracts ended, people were dropping like flies. To be clear, work used to be fun because the team made it fun. Even though the work we were doing wasn't the most fulfilling, we still had each other. And we had access to all of the things that made Google special. The gyms, the volleyball courts, the saunas, the celebrity talks on campus, playing spike ball during lunch. But over time, and with the change in management, I felt that our new team culture became a lot more authoritarian. I remember this one really smart contractor who was an account manager in his 40s. During one of our meetings he stood up and said something like, "I don't understand why we do it like that. I think we should do it like this instead." When we came back from lunch, he was gone. Perhaps he left by his own accord, but the point is that no one stuck around for long. We used to be able to work from home or at the San Francisco office as needed, but all of that changed. With the new management, we now had to be on site every day. Even worse, they moved us from the actual Google campus to the other side of the peninsula, which was formerly the Nest buildings. At that point, you weren't even at Google anymore. You were a 30-minute shuttle away from Google and all of its perks. My coworkers and I knew we were just going to work every day to collect our paychecks. We skirted by, meeting the bare minimum number of required calls and emails. There were no more pitches for how to do anything more efficiently or creatively, and in a year or two, my position and team wouldn't exist. Everyone that I worked with day to day were contractors at Google. You sign a year-long contract that is almost always renewed for a second year. However, at the end of the second year, Google either has to convert you to a full-time employee, or you have to leave for a minimum of 6 months before you can work there again. No one was ever converted to a full-time employee regardless of production or achievements. At the end of their contracts they were gone, with no benefits or severance. The teams that we were training were vendor teams in locations such as Michigan and Arizona. Vendor contracts never expire like a normal contractor's, so they can work for Google indefinitely through their staffing firm. So instead of paying workers Bay Area salaries, they could use vendors that were making somewhere between $15 an hour, and cut expenses almost by half to maintain these non-technical roles. Around 6 months before people on my team started to quit, we had remotely trained the teams of outsourced vendors in Michigan and Phoenix who would eventually be able to do our jobs at a fraction of the cost. Once we were gone, they wouldn't have to pay California employees anymore. In my experience, there was never really anyone at Google trying to fight to keep you. And I found that, for those of us on the lower rungs of the ladder, our personal impact on the company was extremely limited. One of the worst parts about working there, for me, was the heavy siloing of responsibilities, depending on your title. The best part about working for Google was the people. They were inspiring, and we had this amazing team energy and dynamic. And yes, some of the opportunities and benefits that Google provided were truly priceless. There was one week when I worked at 4 different offices across the country. I was in New York, Chicago, San Francisco, and Mountain View. Their offices are amazing and the campus is able to keep you there all day. I'd eat most of my meals, go to the gym, and even play in a basketball league at work. If I stayed until 5, I'd usually just stay through dinner. You could easily stay on campus from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. and only go home to sleep. And I know plenty of people who live like that, especially on the engineering side. The company sucks you in by giving you free meals and the gym and massage chairs and nap pods. For the right roles and for the right positions, working at Google can be an incredible opportunity. Obviously, having Google on my resume is great for me and my future, but I know I made the right decision to leave, and I have no regrets.